Hey everyone, we're back for the second half of the information on shading today. First of all, like I said, this is all theory, which means we're making it up. But basically, you're going to find out that these are the only things that happen, and then we either observe them happening and draw what we see, or we make up what's going to happen in our situation. We have to be very consistent. Pick one light source, and that's how you can work with shading. It's not that hard to work with once you've figured out kind of like what the rules are. So right now we're working on a shadow. If it's from the sun, it's very dark and it's kind of long, stretched out, very parallel. If the shadow's from a closer light source, that tends to fade away, it angles out, and it's darker towards the object, and then more light gets in and kind of breaks it up. So that's the situation that's going to happen here. The light source is very close, so it's going to have some type of a shadow. Like I said, it's going to be a little more specific right here. The idea we're starting off with is it's an oval. It would look at like a circle if we were right above it, but we're not right above it, so it's going to be like an oval. Like I said, because it's this type of one, it's going to fade out. It won't be a perfect oval. If it was outside, it would be. I'm kind of working with this new eraser, like I said, that I don't like as much as I thought I would. So anyway, trying to keep these two the same. So what we're going to do is going to be a little darker, and then we're going to kind of fade it out as we get further and further away. And definitely the darkest right here underneath our object where the light doesn't creep in. So when we're indoors, like I said, the situation, I'm in the classroom right here, there's lots of light kind of bouncing around. So it's not just one light source. It reflects around and does different things, and that's why our shadow's not necessarily just a consistent dark shadow. If you were indoors with just one very strong light source, then yeah, it would be stronger here, but then it would still do the angling thing. So it'd be kind of like halfway between the two. So on this side, I'm going to get kind of a tighter shape. And it might look slightly different on your drawing, but the thing is, it's going to be consistent from one side of your drawing to the rest of your drawing. Only one thing is happening, and the only thing that's happening is I have an object and I have the same light source everywhere I look. So what I'm going to try and do, without making a huge mess, is blend this out, smudge it out, and I'm going to let it fade as it goes further and further away. I'm going to take my eraser, kind of get rid of some of these strong lines I have on the edges here before I do my smudging, and then I'm gonna blend this out. So this is what's happening. You just have to be realistic. What's my situation? Okay, see, that's it. With these erasers, if there's any residue, they smush around. So Mrs. Rouse is definitely not recommending this eraser, and I'm going to use a piece of one I already had. So smudging as it gets further and further away. It's going to lighten up. And you probably don't want lines in it, so if you have lines that are showing, just like I said, use the side of your eraser. Do the best you can to fade them out. And so your shadow might be something like this. It might have a different look to it. And then I'm gonna clean it up just a little bit while I'm here. If you have one of these eraser shields, remember you just put it right next to your object, and that helps keep you from erasing your object itself. Look at how dirty that is right there. I'm gonna clean that up. I'm not liking part of this so much. Clean that up a little bit. So these are the two shadows I have for the drawing right now. But they're consistent within you gotta know where your light source is, like I said. I keep saying that over and over, but it's really important. Okay, the next thing we're gonna put on is our area of shade. Yeah, the thing is, shadow isn't talking about these dark areas on you. Shadow's talking about what you do to something else. Shade, these are those lights and darks that are on you depending on the light source. So shade is part of an object that doesn't receive direct light. Shade, part of an object that doesn't receive direct light. Now, if I get a hit of you on the video, just stop it, catch up, and then continue the videos. So shade is what we're going to put in next, is part of an object that doesn't receive the full light. So the light's shining down on that. This side's going to be brighter, right? And this side is going to be darker because the light's shining on here. It's making it appear lighter. This is going to be darker. So there's only, hardly anything happening right now. Lighter, darker. So we're going to put this in at a little bit of an angle. Now, a lot of people want to add a lot of changes right now, and you have to be clear in your understanding of what's really happening. What's really happening is only that the light's shining on part of it. I'm going to make it kind of a moon shape. If I wanted to, there's a point at which it would be exactly in half. But if we're trying to get a nice 3D look, why would I do that? So I'm making these horrible lines right now. This is Russ. I'm kind of hatching in different directions and usually covers up my lines, but not so smooth today. Actually, I'm trying to hurry and it's ending up costing me more time. I'm just smoothing this out. It should be all one consistent value. Only one thing has happened, and that's that the light source is shining here and it's not shining down there. So it should be all the same. I'm just trying to get the pencil down in there. And then the same thing's happening over here in my other one. Now, depending on the surface quality of what you're drawing, there's going to be some slightly different things happening. I'm drawing something as if it's a children's, those red rubber balls, that kind of a simple toy that children play with. Okay, now that came out great. What is my problem here? That children play with. So I have a soft surface, so my edge here is going to be soft. If this sphere was a glass or marble or metal, something like that, it would have a line and be very, very specific. But I have a soft transition because my surface is soft. So your transition, depending on what you have, will have a different texture. I'm going to go ahead and do a little smudging. If I was taking a little bit more time, I think I have to erase some of those horrible lines. And then I'll just smudge them back out again. I'm really smudging. This is a worksheet, not a piece of fine art, so a little bit of smudging is okay. Like I said, normally take a little more time. Okay, so all that's happened is we have an area in the shape. Now, what you probably know, this isn't the only thing to shading, but this is probably the most important thing. The light's shining on it or it's not. So only a couple things, and this is blocking light from shining down there. So here's an example of one I took a little bit more time with. Get rid of that. Okay, so the next thing that's going to happen is we have an area called reflected light. Now with reflected light, we have light on an object, from the reflection, light on an object from the reflection of direct light on something nearby. Of direct light on an object from the reflection of direct light on something nearby. So what's happening now is that the light is shining down, and just like happened with the shadow, it bounces around and gets confused with other light. As the light is shining down and it bounces back up, it's going to actually light up part of this area back here. And so it's not something we normally think about, but you can observe it around you. In fact, if you were to take something that's really colorful, let's say this pen, if I look at the paper right next to it, the pen is starting to turn that paper a little bit red, or in this case, there's a little bit of green reflecting on the paper right there. So maybe if you show them together, you can see the difference. Anyway, there's reflection. Another thing you can do to see the reflection, if you take your hand, look under your hand, if your hand's about 10 inches up, which mine is, you'll see light under there. Why is there light under my hand? Well, that's because it's bouncing off this white piece of paper. But if I put my hand over this dark surface, I don't see as much because it's bouncing off this darker surface. Anyway, there's a light bouncing around, and so we have to show this light bouncing back up. So the light is not going to bounce right here at the bottom because it's really hard for light to get in there. But you're going to see kind of a row, and we're erasing this in, of a lighter area down here at the bottom of our object where the light has bounced up and lightened up part of it down here below. Now, it's not completely lit up, so it can't be any lighter than this is. It has to be a little darker. So what I'm going to do is just smudge it until it gets just a little bit darker than this area is here. So I had to darken that. I erased it, my reflected light, and then I had to make it so it's just a little bit darker than this area right here. So this is my area of reflected light. I'm going to label my drawing. You don't have to label yours. This little strip right here. And so because we have this reflected light, we always end up with this dark band in the shade. And this is what core is. And core, they call it the shadow core. They make a big fuss over this. But when you're doing shading, you look for this dark band. And that's the area between where the light source is lighting it up and where the reflected light is lighting it. It's kind of the darkest area, with the exception of this little space right here. So the core, we've already drawn it. This right here is the core, this whole dark stripe. We just have to write the definition in. Core is part of an object that doesn't receive direct or reflected light. Part of an object that doesn't receive direct or reflected light. So that's what the core is. I've already drawn that in. So we have one more thing to add, and that would be the highlight. And the highlight is a bright spot here. We're all looking forward to this, where it's kind of like a shimmering place here. What's interesting is it's kind of not where you think it should be. You'd like to think it's right here, but it's not. It's within the surface. It's going to be somewhere on this band right here. In fact, there's probably going to be a whole row of them. Now, just to show you a little something when you think about our highlights, if you hold your pencil up like this, and it's going to have highlights up on top. You can see them in the camera right there. But if you move, mine's just staying there because the camera's staying there. But if you move your head back and forth, you're going to see that highlight up there move. And what's happening is the actual location of the highlight. It's not necessarily right on the edge. It's usually in from the edge. Like I said, I know it's going to be on this band from experience. And it's where the light skims across the surface and bounces back at you. It has to do with where you are looking at this. So if I'm looking at this pencil like this and somebody sitting next to me is looking at the same pencil, they're going to see different highlights. It has to do with where you are and where the light source is. That's how we find a highlight. And there's actual formulas for finding highlights. But you know what? You can fake it as long as you're very consistent within your drawing. Anyway, so you have to realize it's not going to be on the edge. We're making it up as far as this one. There are formulas to find it. Let's write down the definition. We'll put it in. A bright spot on an object caused by oh, it's not a caused by. Sorry about that. This is a relating to the location of the light source and the viewer. So a bright spot on an object relating to the location of the light source and the viewer. So the location has to do with where you are. Now, if I was drawing something that is a cube, like here's my phone, you can see there's definitely some light sources on the edges, but they're not all the way within the edge. They're still angled in just a bit if you were able to kind of isolate that. So I know it's going to be in this area here. I also know that this is a soft surface. If I was drawing something with a texture that, like I said, was glass or metal, or marble, something like that, it's going to have really tight edges to it. Be very, you know, organized and look like little mirrors or something like that. But this is going to be soft because my surface is soft. Usually there's maybe one dominant highlight and maybe some lesser highlights. So in this band here, you can decide where it is. Somewhere in this band, there's going to be one that's a little stronger and then some lesser ones. And there's no magic amount of how many are there. In fact, I think I'll take one out because I think, you know, 3 is always better than 4. So, but the thing is, I had to be consistent. It's going to be in the same place on this other one located in another spot in my drawing. They're going to have the same location for their highlight. So I'm going to erase the highlight in, then I'll probably do some smudging and control it just a little bit more. So the angle depends on the light source in you, and the shape of it depends on the surface texture. I made them a little bit bigger on that one. I want them bigger. They need to be kind of small. So I can use my handy dandy eraser shield and you put it in with that instead. See, I got a really nice little spot there. And then, yeah, I'm gonna erase that back up. So I had to make those a little smaller. Anyway, same angle of highlights, and then it looks like this could exist in the same world as this one because we've kept the shading consistent. But this is what shading does. This is how it works. This is how you would fake it, just being consistent within your drawing. You don't necessarily draw the sun on your art piece. What we're going to be doing next is practicing shading that we observe. But it's basically, where's the light hitting it? Where is it tucked away from the light? Where is light bouncing back up? And where has our object caused other objects to be darker or areas of shadow? So we're only looking for certain things. There's a lot of logic to it, and observing what you see and consistency. That's the keys to shading. So I'm going to end this video. You're going to go ahead, take a photo when you're done, and then send it to the grade book. Thank you. Good job, you guys. I hope it was kind of fun.